We're back out here once again, and today we're talking about a couple of secret tips that I like to use to get some bites on those really tough days when the bass just don't want to cooperate. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one.
There we go, I got him. That's a better one. That's a better one, kids. Stay down. That's a good fish. Holy cow, that's a really good fish. Stay down, stay down. Oh my goodness, that's a good fish. That's a tank, that's a toad. Holy cow. This one here is a big one. Oh my goodness.
And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. Let's face it, we bass anglers are a funny lot, aren't we? Every time we head out to the water to do a bit of bass fishing, we are opening ourselves up to disappointment and frustration. But when we head out to the lake, we've got our hopes sky high. We know we have the right lures tied on, we know where those bass are going to be, and we are going to catch piles of fish. It's going to be a great day. But as the day wears on and as the hours creep by, cast after cast, we're not getting any bites. The frustration starts to set in, and we head home, aggravated with a skunk and taking an L for the day. But the funny part about it is, we will turn around and do the very same thing at the first available opportunity. Part of being a bass angler. But it doesn't have to be that way. See, there is no cosmic conspiracy that's keeping you from getting bites. There is no super big algorithm going on in the background that is keeping you from getting bites. It's not rocket science. It's very, very simple, and it's very, very easy to fix. See, there are only ever two reasons that you're not getting bites. That's it. Only two. There's not some great big pile of this or that. You don't have to keep making this little tweak or that little tweak. You don't have to make it so super complicated. There's only ever two reasons. And the first reason is so simple. It's the easiest thing to fix. There are no bass where you're throwing your lure. You're fishing empty water. And right now, this time of year, most of the water on your fishery is going to be empty because those bass have grouped up into large schools. They will spend the winter that way, and even into the pre-spawn. They won't start breaking up again until the late spring. You have to keep that in mind. So chances are, if you're not getting bites where you are fishing, first and foremost, it's empty water. Move. Fish different water. That is the first and easiest way you can change the outcome of when you go bass fishing. And I know you're a bank angler, but you can still move around. And I've heard a lot of people tell me, Lowbrow, I've got this one spot that I fish, and that's the only spot that I ever fish. I can't go any other place on my fishery. To which I say, yes, you can. You absolutely can. You just won't. And whenever I talk to these guys about it, we start to dissect things. It's like, well, do you have any other spot on this lake? Yeah, well, but there's all kinds of vegetation and trash right there, and I can't make casts that I want to make. Well, the vegetation and trash are probably holding fish, so why aren't you fishing there? And then you talk about, well, in my favorite spot, a whole bunch of other guys are fishing in the same area. I don't have another place to go. Now, listen, let's look at this realistically. Is there a brick wall, a concrete structure like the Berlin Wall that surrounds your fishery? Is there? Do you only have one opening in one spot that you can get through that wall to go fishing into? Then you can move spots. You can always move spots. You might have to trek through the woods. You might have to look for some really strange ways to get there, but you can always move spots. I've heard the same thing people tell me on the big lake all the time. I can only fish at the fishing pier, or I can only fish at the boat ramp. No, you can head way off down into the woods and you can find some really good spots to fish. I've done it. I've done it repeatedly. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes I have to walk through the woods. Sometimes I have to move branches out of the way, but it's worth it to make that trek. It's just like a boater. Sometimes a boater has to make that long run. And on bigger lakes, you can be an hour, 2 hours hauling across the water just to find the water where those bass are going to be. So rule number one, fish different water. Change where you are. And I'm telling you, you're going to have much better results. So the first biggest mistake that many anglers make is fishing empty water. That sweet spot that you had during the summer might be bone dry right now, but it's easy enough to fix. Now the second thing is, let's say we found life. Let's say we found those bass. You can see sunfish, shad, shiners around the bank. You see birds that are fishing nearby, so you know there's life in the water. And when there's life, there's going to be bass. Sometimes you can even see the bass. They'll reveal themselves to you. You see them breaking the surface, or you see them swimming around in clear water. But they're still not biting your baits. What do we do then? Well, it boils down to two reasons there as well. And again, these are simple enough to fix. The first thing is your presentation does not match the conditions you are fishing. Case in point, it's slick calm, gin clear water, and you're throwing a great big bladed spinnerbait or a big chatterbait. Those are usually not great ideas and conducive to getting bites whenever you have calm, clear conditions. All right, what about if those bass are suspended, especially in a little bit deeper water? Well, we really don't want to be fishing bottom bouncing techniques. You guys know how much I love fishing a jig, but if those bass are suspended, I'm not going to be fishing a jig because I'm not going to get any bites. So we have to match the conditions that we're fishing. Another way we have to do it is we have to make sure that we see things from the bass's perspective, as I've talked about so many times in the past. We have to think about what the mood of those bass is and what are they willing to bite. And that means a lot of times we have to pare things down. We have to go smaller than we think we need to. You see, this is a Kitech swim bait. This is a normal 4-inch Kitech swim bait, and it's smaller on as far as swim baits go. This is on the smaller side. Great little swim bait, but I will go even smaller than that. I like to use these 3-inch swim baits, and you can see the difference here, how much longer the Kitech is. But even something like this is going to be what's working in a lot of your fisheries. It's definitely working on my fishery, where I can't get any attention with those bigger baits. 3.75, 4-inch Kitechs are getting ignored. Something like this is getting those fish's attention. And something like a color change, that's where I'm working with these if I'm going to dial it in. Say if I'm getting some interest, I get those fish to follow it in, or I get them to slap it, but they're not committing. I know I'm on the right track, and that's when I'm going to go for something like changing the style of the swim bait or changing the color of the swim bait just to dial that in. Another thing that we're talking about is, well, something like a jig, right? You guys know I love to fish a jig, but like this 1/2-ounce flipping jig, this may be more than what we need to be throwing during the wintertime. Those bass may not want to eat something this big. That's why we go to something like this 1/4-ounce flipping jig. This is a Diamondback Baits flipping jig in that rust bucket color. I make these. Check them out. They're really good. But I'm also going to be going to something that has a smaller trailer. It's not just the jig. Pairing down with a smaller jig can be a great way to get bites, but I'm also going to be pairing it down with a smaller trailer to give us an overall smaller presentation. We've got these Rage Craws here, and they're great. I love a Rage Craw. They are amazing. They work well. They're probably my all-around favorite craw. But whenever I want to pare down that presentation, I'm going to go something even smaller, like this little Guggen Kraken craw, right? You guys have heard me talk about these a lot lately. Look how much smaller that is. Now, I could actually bite this down. I could cut it down and put it on there, and it would be shorter, yes. And it would be more compact. But this is just smaller. And sometimes that's exactly what I need to be doing. And it doesn't just apply to jigs, and it just doesn't apply to swim baits, right? Flukes are another thing. A fluke is an amazing bait to be using in the fall or in the winter. They catch so many fish. But on those days when maybe those bass aren't as hungry, maybe they're just not feeling it, well, I go with a Fluke Junior. And you can see how much smaller that Fluke Junior is than that regular size soft plastic jerkbait. They're much smaller. And a lot of times, even when those bass don't want to feed, even when they're not feeling it, you put something little in front of their face, a little irresistible snack, and they are going to inhale it, and you can get some really good bites doing that. All right, we need to make sure that we're matching the bait with not only the conditions, but the mood of the bass. You know, I love throwing a hard jerkbait. Everybody says that a hard jerkbait is probably the best bait during the winter. And there's a lot of strong evidence for that. But even something like this, we can go even smaller, right? I can go to a 200 size. And you can see how much smaller this little KVD 200 is than this Yozuri. I mean, it's got 2 hooks on it rather than 3 because it can fit a third one on there. And I like not just the color. You can use duller colors. You can use more translucent ones. But the smaller type of jerkbait is going to be a big player whenever those bass are going to be lethargic, whenever they're not going to have the energy, when the strike window is going to come down quite a bit, the radius at which those bass are willing to strike. And even then, I can go even smaller and more subtle still to a spy bait. And you guys know I have been on a big spy bait kick lately as I've really dialed in figuring out how to use them. And they're a magnificent presentation on those days when the bass are just not feeling it, when they're lethargic, they're dragging their heels in the mud and they don't want to cooperate. Again, you put something slow and small right in front of their face, make it irresistible for them, and they can't resist, and you're going to find yourself getting some great bites. It's just that simple. You don't have to make bass fishing complicated. You're either fishing empty water or you're not throwing what the bass want to bite. You correct those two things, and you'll have to make it into some complicated process. Go to where the bass are. That's simple enough. And the second thing is, whenever those fish are not biting your lures, either change drastically based on what you're seeing, like you're not getting any attention at all, or make a subtle change if you're getting a little bit of attention, but you haven't really dialed it in. You take those two things into consideration and you work with them rather than working against them, and you'll be surprised that even on the biggest grind, those days that seem to drag on, you'll still be able to put some fish in the boat. So there you have it. When those days are a real grind, you have a couple of tricks in your back pocket that you can pull out to generate some extra bites. Might be small fish, but you can hone it in to catch bigger fish. And as we say around here, I'll take a dink over a skunk any day. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.